John Irvine, News at 10, Belfast.
The number of people killed in floods and landslides in southern Italy was tonight put at 25, and there are fears the total could go much higher yet. 70 are still listed missing. The Interior Minister said whole towns are drowning in mud. Rivers of mud swept with terrifying speed across the low-lying Campania region from Caserta, north of Naples, down to the coastal town of Salerno. Our Foreign News correspondent Paul Davis reports from Sarno, one of the places worst hit.
The mud came without warning, washed down the mountainside by days of torrential rain. It started as a stream, but soon turned into a black, deadly river, engulfing everything in its path as it flowed down towards the small towns and villages at the foot of the mountains outside Naples. Most of the victims died in their flooded homes. This man was lucky, attracting the attention of the rescue teams. He was pulled from the mud just in time. A short time later, the Black River flowed over the building where he'd been sheltering. Many of his fellow villagers were not so fortunate. By late afternoon, as the death toll mounted, the authorities said they believed as many as 70 people were still missing. Many of them, they believed, buried alive in the town of Sarno. Police and army helicopters searched for survivors, shuttling between the devastated hillsides and an emergency medical base just outside Sarno. Early this evening, they were still retrieving people who'd been trapped by the mudslides, including patients from a Sarno hospital cut off by the flow. But hope for those still missing was fading fast. Thousands of families have been evacuated from their homes, but many returned to Sarno this afternoon to watch the clear-up get underway, as nature, until now so destructive, at last relented. For the first time in 3 days, it has actually stopped raining, and the river of mud behind me has stopped flowing. But the authorities say it will be several more days before it's safe for people to return to their homes. Paul Davis, News at 10, Sarno, southern Italy.
The FA has ordered the England football captain Alan Shearer to explain the incident in which he appeared to kick another player in the face deliberately in a Premiership match a week ago. He said tonight he was totally confident he could prove it wasn't intentional. Shearer could be fined or even banned, but nothing would come into force until after the World Cup. Our sports correspondent Graham Miller reports.
It was business as usual today for Alan Shearer. Along with his Newcastle teammates, he was modelling the latest playing strip that his club will be wearing for away games next season. As England captain, he's in constant demand from sponsors and advertisers to promote their products. The incident during last week's Premiership game at Leicester looks clear enough. The video apparently shows Shearer kicking out at Neil Lennon. Shearer himself expressed his horror when seeing the pictures, insisting he was only trying to release his leg from the clash. Tonight, the England captain said, "I fully understand the need for all players to be treated equally by the FA. I'm totally confident I will eventually prove to everyone that the incident was not intentional." Tonight, the sports minister was asked about the story during a television phone-in on CNN in America.
Passions run very, very high in football, and sometimes they spill out, as it were, into the sort of action that no one could approve of, whether it takes place on the pitch or whether it takes place in the stands from people who are watching.
The FA say a commission will consider an alleged breach of rules by the England captain, although the understanding is Shearer has been charged with misconduct. Lennon, the victim of the clash, said he didn't want Shearer charged, and in his view, if it hadn't been the England captain, nothing further would have happened. It was the same story in Newcastle.
Worse tackles happen than that, and just because it's Alan Shearer, no, he shouldn't be done for it at all.
With him being England captain, I think he's up there in a pedestal. You know what I mean? He's there to be knocked down.
He's a footballer. He's not a model for a role model for like people. He's a footballer, full stop, and he's a good one.
Whatever the outcome of the Football Association investigation, 2 points remain clear tonight. Firstly, that Alan Shearer will be able to play for Newcastle in the FA Cup final on Saturday week. And secondly, he will be able to captain England into the World Cup finals in June. Graham Miller, News at 10, Lancaster Gate.
The Foreign Secretary Robin Cook announced an independent inquiry today into the arms to Sierra Leone affair. Foreign Office officials are said to have given the nod to a firm of British military consultant to supply the arms illegally and in breach of UN sanctions. Mr. Cook insisted that ministers hadn't known about it and said there'd be no whitewash. Our political editor, Michael Brunson, reports.
This all goes back to the coup last year in Sierra Leone in West Africa, when President Kaba was first deposed and then restored, but not before hundreds of people had been pinned down in a hotel in the capital, Freetown, before an evacuation which the British High Commissioner, Peter Penfold, did much to secure. But now there are questions about how much Mr. Penfold knew about an arms shipment to Sierra Leone arranged by this man, Colonel Tim Spicer, and his British company Sandline, in apparent breach of a United Nations embargo. In an almost empty House of Commons in March this year, the Foreign Office Minister Tony Lloyd used a late-night debate to defend the High Commissioner, Mr. Penfold, and Britain's actions in Sierra Leone.
The suggestion that Britain was conspiring with hired killers is simply wrong. I want to record that on behalf of the government.
But today, the Foreign Secretary Robin Cook revealed that just 2 days before that debate, Foreign Office officials had ordered an inquiry by Customs and Excise into the arms shipment. And in the Commons, Mr. Cook told the Shadow Foreign Secretary Michael Howard that those officials had failed to tell the Minister what was going on until almost a month later. Mr. Howard said that was very serious.
Does that not indicate that officials in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office are wholly out of control?
Mr. Cook, who'd already announced an extra independent inquiry, spoke of his deep concern.
But I can assure him we are determined to get at the facts, and the facts will be followed by necessary action.
Mr. Cook not exactly hiding his annoyance there. Not surprising, perhaps, because it was he who led such a ferocious attack on the last government over the arms to Iraq affair. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Westminster.
The Lord Chief Justice, Lord Bingham, said today that judges should protect women in rape cases from long and humiliating cross-examination by the men accused of attacking them. He said the judge should take over the questioning when that happened. Jo Andrews reports.
It's cases like Julia Mason's that have caused such concern. Miss Mason, who waived her right to remain anonymous, was extensively cross-examined in court by the man who raped her after he chose to defend himself. And last year, another rapist, Anthony Milton Brown, bizarrely interrogated his victims before being sentenced to 16 years in prison. Now, the Lord Chief Justice, Lord Bingham, in rejecting Brown's appeal, has told judges they have a duty to minimise the trauma suffered by complainants. He told them to discuss the case with defendants first, to stop defendants dwelling on a particular point, if necessary to take over the questioning themselves, and to put up a screen if the defendant tries to intimidate the complainant.
Everybody has the ultimate right to represent himself if he wants to. What we're trying to avoid is defendants taking unfair advantage of that situation, and I think these guidelines will help to do that.
They are a tiny drop in the ocean compared with the problem that we have, where only about 9.4% of reported rapes